It is 5:30 and welcome to this evening's executive meeting. Before we start the meeting, a little housekeeping for this evening. Please can I remind all attendees of the following. Please can all mobile phones be kept on silent or turn them off during the meeting where possible. There are no fire alarms planned this evening, so in the event of a fire, please make your way out of the room and follow a member of staff to the evacuation point on Southern A Green at the Blitz Tree. A reminder of how I intend to proceed. We will hear from the officers to introduce the report, and I will invite questions and comments from the executive members. After the executive members have spoken, I will then invite group leaders who have indicated they wish to speak. I will call them forward to the table in order of those who have indicated to speak. I wish to remind group leaders that questions may be asked, but also their contributions are clear as to whether they, as a councillor, intend to support or if they have discussed it with their group and their group are inclined to support the recommendation. This will assist the executive in our decision-making process. Questions may not be answered on the evening, and in this case, a written answer will be given. If it is a question about the report or the detail, I will try to ensure that questions regarding to the recommendations itself will be answered on the evening, if that will help the executive form their voting view. We will then confirm the recommendations from the report and move to the vote. Please also note, for any items which has already been considered and debated by other committees, I ask that members do not repeat the same questions which have already been answered at those committees, or if they are waiting for an answer outside of that committee. So thank you for that. I now move on to any apologies for absence. I don't believe there are any. I think we've got a full house this evening, which is good. I then move on to declarations of interest. Please put any declarations. I've got the minutes of the 20th of May. If it's agreeable, I'll move that I sign them. Can I show seconded and all in favour to sign them? Thank you. Now move on. There are no part 2 items in this evening's agenda. There have been no public questions received. And I move to number 6, which is matters referred by scrutiny to the executive. And the customer focus scrutiny held on the 3rd of July recommended that the executive to send findings from the work on box shifting to government to consider as part of their review. We will do just that. So hopefully we've carried out the wish of the customer focus meeting there. Thank you very much for that. We will deal with the corporate plan. We've got a bit of time. After the corporate plan, I intend to deal with the local development scheme for SUMA is 1M in summer 2025. And so in the first instance, the corporate plan, number 7, this is pages 21 to 68. We've got a recommendation to council for approval and then to resolve matters here. So I'm going to hand over first of all to Bindu for this. Bindu.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. The report seeks members' agreement to the draft Exeter City Council corporate plan for 2025 to 2028. The timing of this plan is helpful because it ensures that we continue to focus on members' key priorities while we develop the Council's proposal for unitary status. The plan reflects the Council's approach very much to continuing to deliver a well-run Council by providing clarity for staff and stakeholders on priorities and intended outcomes, allowing for measures on progress to be developed. The plan, as you will see, outlines the key priorities of local economy, homes, people and sustainable environment, underpinned, of course, by a focus on a well-run Council. Members may wish to note that each service area will be developing their service plans and risk registers based on these priorities, and these will, of course, be shared by the directors with portfolio holders. And alongside that, we'll be looking to develop a corporate performance framework so that we can measure on and report progress in achieving those priorities. You will also see, as you're already aware, the report presents the outcome of the corporate plan consultations. This includes feedback from residents and stakeholders. Members and officers have very carefully considered this feedback, and where possible, we have reflected that in the draft that's before you this evening. We're happy, of course, to take any questions, any further detail about the consultation or the process. So we're in your hands. Thank you, Chair.
And indeed, item 2.3 says any necessary drafting amendments before we finally publish are delegated to the Chief Executive and myself. So obviously, if there's any further observation or notes, we will pick them up here. So I'll open it up, and I've got Councillor Vizard.
Thank you, Leader. I don't know if this is the appropriate moment to table an amendment, but I do have one. Okay to go ahead, and I'll just explain a little bit about why, if I have just a moment or two. So my proposed
Is it
amendment,
a drafting issue, Councillor? Is it a drafting
it's
thing?
an amendment to one of the intended outcomes of the report, if that's all right. Yeah. So the wording of my amendment would be to remove the words "a carbon neutral city" under page 9 of the corporate plan, and replace with "a net zero carbon city." And it just in sort of explanation there, and I do acknowledge that the draft plan was perceived positively by residents. However, it's clear that language and consistency of language is important. So while the terms carbon neutral and net zero carbon often are used interchangeably and to mean the same thing in many cases, there is a difference, which as a local authority, which is as pioneering and ambitious in its approach to tackling the climate crisis, I think we need to be absolutely clear about. So while it is the same concept, net zero is physical action to reduce our emissions to the minimum possible and then consider offsets. To be carbon neutral, you don't have to reduce emissions at all, in theory, and could offset 100% to achieve carbon neutrality. So I think it's an important distinction in terms of language. So that's my amendment, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a proposed amendment to one of the outcomes, please. This is something that has been picked up during the process through the workshops that we've had and feedback through my portfolio as well for local economy. And I can see that an amendment has been made in the body of the corporate plan, but it's still, the issue is still in there somewhere else. So the bit I'm talking about is how a measurable outcome for local economy. It's the point put on, if we look at the report, it's page 23, bullet point 3. Businesses will be reporting an increase in footfall. So what I talked about before on that is that we're no longer measuring footfall as a way of collecting data for business growth and business success. So nobody's going to be reporting footfall in that way. So it's not really good for us to have that as a measurable outcome. In Exeter did give very good comprehensive feedback through the consultation, and they picked up that point as well, that the way that they're now going to be measuring isn't footfall, it's lingering dwell time, that's the word, isn't it? Sales, and being able to actually get lots of data from different places, such as, frightening though it is, credit card spend, data that comes from all over the place, that everybody knows what we're doing apparently, but it's legal to collect that data unless we've told people not to. So all of that data gives a much better idea of why people are coming into the city centre, how long they stay for and where they go, rather than just footfall, which previously was measured by cameras, just sort of counting people going past the counters, the cameras in the high street. So my request for an amendment there, and it's been changed in the body of the, on page 12, sorry, of the corporate plan itself, where it says priority local economy, strategic outcome measures, measuring footfall data had been taken out of that part, but it's still at the beginning and somewhere else in there and in the report. So please could that be amended in such a way perhaps businesses will be noting an increase in customers or wording it some way, but just to take out that aspect. Thank you.
I'll come back to Bindu on that point.
Yeah,
Bindu.
if you're happy, Chair, then absolutely we'll work with Councillor Wright and also understand the specific measure in Exeter are using and reflect that throughout.
Yes,
No
it makes sense. Now, before I come to you, Councillor Wood, because I will give the right of Councillor Vizard and right to come back. Stephen Clayton, who is Head of Service for Customers and Communities, is going to give us a little talk in relation to the consultation process, and that may help us going forward. Okay, Stephen.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is just a short presentation on the consultation work that's fed into the formation of the corporate plan, and shows how the insights were gathered and how they link to some of the outcomes within the plan itself. In terms of a timeline, this highlights the key milestones in our consultation. It began with the resident survey in summer 2024 and continued with the budget and corporate priorities consultation that was run over November, December 2024. Insights from these activities then fed into a series of workshops with SMB and executive members and helped shape the corporate plan. The draft plan was then subject to a final round of consultation in March and April 2025. In terms of methodology, we commissioned Inventure Research to conduct both our resident survey and the budget and corporate priorities consultation to ensure broad and representative feedback. And across both these exercises, we received over 2,800 responses, offering valuable insights into residents' views on life in Exeter, council services, and the proposed priorities. And for the final consultation, we adopted a more targeted approach, engaging directly with community groups, businesses, and notably, as mentioned, in Exeter, provided significant feedback at this stage. In terms of insights related to the local economy, we could demonstrate strong support for outcomes around growth, with 76% of respondents backing investment in regeneration and business attraction. Feedback from the budget and corporate priorities consultation also reflected recurring concerns around safety, particularly at night time. Under the people priority, respondents to the budget and corporate priorities consultation prioritised targeted services for those on low incomes, which reflected a strong community commitment to tackling inequality. The corporate plan consultation also highlighted the link between Exeter's cultural offer and the wider benefits of that, such as health, employment, and prosperity. And once again, safety after dark emerged as a key concern in the resident survey, which is mentioned a couple of times within the plan itself. In terms of homes and housing, from the budget and corporate priorities consultation, there was clear support for quality, affordable homes, with 65% of respondents supporting facilitating new housing delivery, 77% backing the construction of new council homes. These insights directly informed the outcomes under the homes priority. Respondents, including in Exeter, also stressed the importance of integrating new developments into existing communities and ensuring sustainable, inclusive growth. Around sustainable environment priorities, this revealed strong support for sustainability, with 81% of respondents in the budget and corporate priorities consultation backing affordable, clean energy initiatives. In the corporate plan consultation, some respondents raised concerns around the infrastructure needed to achieve a carbon neutral city, but there was also strong support for maintaining parks, open spaces, and the contribution that made to biodiversity. Around the well-run council element, there was a strong desire represented around engagement and transparency, with involvement in decision-making and service design a top priority in this particular theme, followed closely by the delivery of value for money services. Responses to the resident survey also emphasised the importance of being kept informed, which is reflected in the plan's focus on accessible information and multi-channel service access. So to conclude, community and stakeholder engagement played a key role in informing every stage of the corporate plan to ensure that priorities did align with public expectations. Looking ahead, we have a continued commitment to listening. And in fact, our second round of resident surveys will be starting this Wednesday. and run across July and August, with the results being published in the autumn. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That's quite an understanding of how we got to where we are based upon the plan. Okay, I don't know if Matt or Councillor Vizard or Councillor Wright wanted to come back, not for a second bite, but just about any consultation process. Ever think about it? I will come back. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at this plan, it's very, very good. I mean, it's complex, but it's rightly complex. Our city is served by the council, but it's across a huge range of work. But in this plan, there's 4 interlocking pillars: local economy, people, homes, sustainable environment. And this supports the cross-service way of working. It stops silo working. It means that we're looking at specific outcomes. And that's where the outcomes listed under each heading make such a difference. It's not delivered by any specific service as we understand it. And it actually makes it about what individuals need from the council, as well as what the city overall needs. So I think the outcomes are really important. The fact that there's four pillars, I think, is essential. And the thing that's threaded through this as well is that the council works on 2 levels. We have statutory services and we have discretionary services. And we deliver our statutory service to a really high standard. But much of what we do, much of what people know that council does, is discretionary. My portfolio is leisure and well-being. That's discretionary. It's embedded within the people element of this report, but it is discretionary. We don't have to do it, but the impact and the value to our residents is beyond question. So it's not that we don't have to do it, but we choose to do it because the residents tell us they want it and they need it. So I think this plan is really good at helping us to balance out and focus between the needs of the city, the things we need to achieve, and what we're told by residents that they want. So it's a very good report, and I'm pleased to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from what Councillor Wood said, the cross-department working, I think one of the really important elements of the plan is that we've got measures and metrics for each of the 4 pillars, as well as a well-run council. And so I just wondered if we could have a little bit of clarification. It says in the introduction of the plan, the delivery of the plan will be carefully monitored against the key metrics, so really important, and we've set out to ensure it's successful in meeting the needs of our residents, communities and businesses. So that the actual monitoring of it is going to be really important. And just could we have a little bit more information about how that's going to be communicated? Thank you.
Thank you. I know Councillor Wright wanted to come back on the council consultation, I assume, Councillor Wright.
Yes, thank you. Having come straight in with something that I wanted changing, I do want to say thank you very much for all the work that's gone on with this. And it's been very good collaborative work between SMB and Exec. We've got to a place where we're all behind this, and it really is a joint sort of vision of where we want to go with things. But also, really key big part is this residents' engagement and consultation, and the way that things that come out of that have fed in to our discussions. One key thing for me, it's been mentioned already, about 59% of residents, only 59%, sorry, feel safe after dark. So the work that we're doing with Community Safety Partnership, with the City Centre strategy, and hoping to now sort of break through that 2-tier system to go knocking on the door of Devon County Council again, with regard to key things such as lighting, which make being out in the dark not so dark, and therefore can really help with safety. This sort of gives us a bit of data to be able to go back and do that again, gives us a bit more oomph. So it's really great. It's really good to see this good engagement and a really high take up of people in that did the consultation as well. I think that's unheard of, to have that amount of people engaging with a consultation from Exeter City Council. So the way that it was put out so that people knew about it and could engage with it is also worth a thank you and a commendation on that. Thank you.
Did you want, Councillor Vizard?
Thank you. Likewise, Councillor Wright says, having come in quickly with an amendment, I do also appreciate the amount of work that's been done on this, and it has been a really, really good and important process. And the engagement, I completely agree, engagement with the public has been excellent, and I think we're on a really good footing with all our public consultation now. So thank you to all the team for all the efforts there. Just reflect a little bit on housing, and note the consultation identified clear support for new homes, and particularly to address the housing crisis, combat homelessness. I note the concern about the loss of green spaces. I think that's a concern of us all, and as we've had debates recently, it's a balanced approach. But I think that also suggests that the council's brownfield first approach is broadly supported by the public. So that's encouraging. And just in terms of the net zero, I note that this received the most critical feedback. It's all in proportion. It's only a relatively small amount, but in terms of the whole reports, that was probably an area around cycle routes, public transport, parking fees that people have some concerns about, which I think we need to hear and make sure that our methods of communication about what we're doing positively for the environment go out there, and how that's all joined up with that. So something to reflect on, and something we'll come to later again this evening. But also, I think important to show that we continue to show our leadership on that. We can't afford not to take this action. So we need, as with our ambitious plans, to take the public with us. So just a couple of reflections, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to say, the issue that Matt bring up, the amendment, do we need that as a formal amendment, or do we pick it up under 2.3 about the drafting amendments? Just for the minutes and that point of view, and the same with the footfall, and then that clarification. I just want to know whether or not we need to move a separate amendment at the end, or whether or not we pick it up as necessary drafting amendments. Can you just tell us on that, Chief Exec?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, we'll pick it up as part of the drafting amendments.
Okay, all right. Is that okay? And we'll, I know you'll make sure I do that. And that clarification that Councillor Williams was on about, do you want to address that now before I bring the other leaders in?
I shall, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So underneath each of the metrics within the plan, there's been detailed work with the directors and heads of service to identify measures that will be able to provide evidence towards those outcome metrics, and that includes activity from within our own business system, so to about the services that we deliver, but where appropriate it will be data that's collected by other organisations. And we are in the very final stages of just coming up for what we call user acceptance testing of a corporate performance framework, where we have built a series of automated reports that draw data down from a range of sources that will cover all of the data that we've identified is relevant in terms of being able to measure against those metrics. So once we've had probably a month to 2 months of trialling and testing, then we'll obviously be able to report back to executive on the corporate performance framework itself and what the data is telling us, and where we've got comparators with other authorities. We'll be able to share that, and then when we feel confident that the data is accurate, we'll be able to publish it and make it available on the council website so anybody could have a look and see how we're doing against the corporate plan. It's a really complicated piece of work, and there's some fantastic work going on right across the organisation to do that. And then as part of the organisational development work, each of the directors within their performance development review have objectives that directly link to the corporate plan priorities, and that's now followed through to all of the heads of service who also have objectives, and they're now taking those through to their managers. So the aim is that all staff should be able to see the work that they do and how that has a direct, like, golden thread up to these outcomes that members want to see in the corporate plan. Still a work in progress. It's not going to be perfect in every area, but I think we've had a lot of feedback from staff that they've actually already having the conversation about how their particular role has an impact on the outcomes that members want to see is really rewarding for staff. As Bindu also mentioned, each of the directorates is creating a business plan, and again, those director objectives, these metrics will be seen in all of those department business plans. They will also have another dashboard that goes at a slightly lower level than the corporate dashboard, where go to track individual activity and individual services against the eventual outcomes in the corporate plan. It will probably take us the best part of this year to get that really working brilliantly, but the amount of work that's already gone on and the collaboration across the organisation has been pretty impressive in terms of us being able to look at the way we deliver services right across the council with that helicopter view in a way we probably haven't been able to do in the past. But it really is, it's helped by having such clarity that came from you as members around the things that were most important to you and the outcomes that you wanted to see for residents.
Thank you, Joe. So any of the leaders wish to indicate? I've got Councillor Moore and then Councillor Mitchell. If you'd like to come up, I don't know where we put them to this time. Okay, we got them over there. Okay.
Thank you very much. Very interesting to hear the conversation about your corporate plan. In November, there was an email that was sent to councillors, and it was stating that the consultation on the budget and corporate priorities was being launched for residents to input their views, and it's really good that we are consulting on these things. It's really important. I see it's stressed in the report that the resident stakeholders and executive member officer workshops took place. So I am disappointed that the leader has not reached out to councillors from other groups to invite them to contribute their views on behalf of their communities that they represent on the corporate plan. But we are paying attention, and we did write to you about this. Unfortunately, our responses aren't acknowledged in the report, although I do welcome the response from Councillor Vizard, because we wrote to him to clarify the issue around carbon neutral net zero. So I do welcome his proposed amendment to the document, because it's absolutely critical, because carbon neutral is a wider definition which really relies on a lot of offsets. Just in terms of the report, I am not clear about the outcome that's relating to nature. Twice now the council has declared a crisis in relation to nature in the city, and the outcome is a well-maintained parks, green spaces and biodiversity. Well, well-maintained parks nobody can argue with, but actually having a metric that's meaningful for green spaces and nature perhaps needs a little bit more explanation. So I would hope that as part of any tweaking, that actually that issue might be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Leader. Two observations rather than detailed comments. In the actual outline of the corporate plan, which I think all of us would agree is first class, the aims are brilliant. That's what the residents want and what we want on behalf of our community. My only slight concern or observation is the limited mention of the University of Exeter, which I think plays a key role in our community and is the driver for us in so much of what we can do and can achieve, particularly in relation to climate and other things. It's only listed as a partner, and I was hoping there'd be a little bit more there about that. And that cross references to the, and I might have misread it, I do apologise, in regard to the consultation. When you look on page 49, according to this, of the 53 respondents you had, nobody below the age of 25 was asked or took part in it. And I think now we've got such a high percentage of young people, particularly able people through the university, I think we ought to spend a distinct amount of time asking young people about what their vision is for Exeter, instead of asking us older people who need Specsavers to find our vision.
Thank you. I don't want to be insulting. I don't think anybody's under 25 in this room, are they? I mean, but there you go. Thank you for that. If Councillor Moore, your disappointment's noted, can you give perhaps, is it Joe may want to comment, or I'll leave it up to you guys, in relation to the outcomes about the nature metric, and then also about the university, and of course page 49. And did we ask 25s or just didn't they really think this was the stuff they were worried about? I'll leave it to you to explain that to us.
Thank you, Nita. I'll start with the under 25s. So the surveys that led up to the development of the corporate plan, so the resident survey and the budget survey, they were done using market research methodology, and they are that's a representative sample of the city. So it includes enough people to be representative of the different characteristics of people that live in the city. So that includes young people, older people, people from different ethnic groups, people who live in different parts of the city who have different levels of income. So that's why that approach is so important. So it's targeted market research with telephone or face-to-face interviews of up to 1,100 people. So that does give us the ability to be able to look at the feedback from people of all types, ages, sizes, shapes and backgrounds in the city. And then what we've also been doing is opening up the same survey on the website so people can choose to do the survey, and then that enables us to compare the difference in responses. And the councillor is absolutely correct. When we run surveys ourselves on our website, the people that opt to use our surveys, irrespective of how we promote them, are generally older people. And that reinforces the importance of doing the resident survey that we're just launching this week, because we know that way we're going to get the views of everybody in the city, irrespective of where they live, how much money they have and their age. And being able to compare and contrast with people that select to do our surveys and those that we go out and seek is actually really valuable insights for members to be aware of. In terms of the outcomes in relation to sustainable environment, I've noted the comments. What I can't recall is what the lots of different outcomes that will be underneath that, the different measures. So we can certainly, as we share the development of the corporate performance framework, we will be able to review and reevaluate some of those additional metrics, and we'll build on it all of the time. So that's really helpful feedback in terms of, this is a starting, not an end point. I think in terms of the university, well, they were certainly invited to comment, as were a wide range of stakeholders. And we did, I don't know the exact number, but we sent emails to a very large number of partners. And we did do several reminders to those organisations. And it is disappointing that we had so few responses from our key stakeholders to this process. And that's something we've got to keep under review. But we can't force people to respond. But we were pretty robust in terms of our invites, asking for people's comments. In terms of the role that the university plays in the city, I think it's important to note that the corporate plan sets out priorities. It doesn't describe everything that we do and every partnership that we have. It's just a way of saying these are the things that are happening that are most important to members in terms of what you want to see change for the city. And these are the most important strategic partners, and the university is in there as one of those.
Thank you for that, Joe. Just to comment upon the survey, when you think the average age of people in Exeter is 35, and then if you take out we didn't hear nobody from 25, it does tell you who's actually responding, if you know what I mean, to that. And you're quite right, we need to actually drill into the cross section of people, and I'm glad you're doing that. And with regard to people engaging, because we're just really, I won't say we're new to this process, we have done it, but we're getting better at this process all the time, and perhaps that engagement, perhaps they'll start seeing that the engagement, actually there is a need to engage. So we got 3 recommendations, and Liz, help me here. This is the first one, a recommendation to council, which will go to council, and 2.2 and 2.3 are 2 resolved matters. Is that correct? Okay, just so that we know going forward what needs to be discussed at council. So I'm going to move those 3 recommendations from the chair. I'm going to call for a seconder. Seconded. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Unanimous. We really need to read the recommendations before if there's a drafting issue. Is there?
So, sorry, no, it was just I was processing a bit about what you said about the amendments that we asked for. They're going to be covered
Under 2.3.
Yeah. So,
2.3, and we said we would take them all up.
I'm sorry.
To do 3, and I'll report them.
Processing.
No, it's okay. So we now move on to, actually, we're now going to jump up to the local development scheme. Go ahead to that, which is number 11. we could jump to that, please. So here we have a local development scheme for summer 2025. At least if you got 5 on the end of that. And we've got a recommendation here, and I believe this is over. Is it you, Ian? Ian, tallest.
Thank you, Chair. So the local development scheme, or LDS, outlines the scope and timetable for preparation of council's planning policy documents, and that includes the Exeter plan, and it is a legal requirement to do this. So you last updated the LDS in February, but it needs updating again, mainly to reflect slightly later timescale of the submission of the Exeter plan, which is now programmed for this September. The new timetable also updates work being undertaken by the university for its St Luke's campus, which it wants to bring forward as a supplementary planning document. So the recommendation is for the executive to approve the updated LDS as in Appendix A of the report as the basis for preparing local planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to open this up to members of the committee. Members of the committee. Councillor Patrick.
So thank you. Just in terms of sort of key dates and content, so just regarding supplementary planning documents and how they can fit into this timetable, can I just confirm that the passing, going ahead with this this plan doesn't prohibit us from introducing any SPDs at a later date?
Anybody else want to say anything? Okay, no, we'll straight into that. If you can give us an answer to that, does it prohibit us from bringing SPDs on co-living and such things? Am I right in saying that? Yes.
So no, it doesn't. The key thing to hold on to really is that in order to bring forward any SPD, you need a policy in an adopted plan as the hook, and then you can hang off that. So any policies that are in the adopted plan, I'm not saying you should do this, but any policies you can then bring forward SPDs, and we don't. We would update the LDS routinely to capture that, but you're not prevented.
Thank you. And just a question for me, and that's similar to some conditions that we may have on some applications, depending on what they are, don't necessarily need to go through to the plan or an SPD, for instance, conditioning co-living to be co-living only, for example, which we were when we went on that meeting to. So that doesn't prohibit us doing anything from that. We don't need to overqualify that anywhere. Right in saying that, or?
So not in terms of the LDS. I mean, it doesn't go into that level of detail, I'm afraid. So
And fine, forget what I just said there. I'm down a rabbit hole and I'm sorry about that. That's okay. Just want to make it clear that's something that we're talking about, but that's okay. So there's nobody else. I'm going to ask if there's any opposition leaders wish to speak on this one. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. I welcome Councillor Patrick's comments because it sort of preempts what I've already written, and so I'd like to know from the portfolio holder for city development if they are looking to bring forward a policy on co-living so that we can manage through the planning system this policy in favour of our people rather than developers' profits.
Anybody else? No other leader? Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, I think that's been answered about the co-living. We're going to be doing that at some stage, and that will come forward. This was a document that come forward to planning member working group, and maybe back to this stage. I don't know, but we are looking at. I'm right in saying that, just to round that off, because we had a very good. For those of us who went to Bristol, we had a very good experience. You know, I've been to Bristol many a time, not so many good experiences, but on this one was a good one. And I just felt it was quite good, the learning we had on other local authorities' approaches to things. Ian, if I just want to comment on that, please.
thanks, Chair. So there was a lot of learning on that trip, and I I've taken the liberty of getting in touch with the chief planner at Bristol, and they are going to share their draft co-living SPD, which isn't in the public domain yet, and we're going to use that as a basis for some work. So there is a policy already in the draft Exeter plan about co-living, so we can hang off that policy an SPD, and certainly know that there's a need for that, because Exeter is one of those places that seems to be attracting a lot of potential investment in the co-living sector, and it's certainly one of the more valuable tenures that we are experiencing at the moment. And there's a lot of kind of complexity as we saw on the trip, so it is well worth, I think, a more detailed guidance on that issue.
The recommendation, which is a resolved matter. I'm going to move it from the chair. Can I have a seconder? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you. So we now flip back to item 8 of the agenda, which is the Newtown Walking and Cycling Infrastructure programme. And here we are, it's Ian and James. Which one's batting first? Okay, you're back first. Okay, thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is proposing the delivery of a project for the community in Newtown to make it easier and safer to walk and cycle through that neighbourhood. We're seeking approval for changes to the Triangle car park, owned and managed by the council, but also endorsement of the whole scheme, which includes works to the highways, and those elements will be considered by Devon's county councils HATOP committee shortly. So the project, is worth saying, very much at the outset, it's not an LTN, and it's something that is very much wanted by the local community. We know that because we've done a lot of consultation and engagement ever since 2021, and people have told us that they want to see improvements to make it easier for them to walk and cycle through their neighbourhood and stop cars travelling through unnecessarily. So that's this scheme responds to that. It's essentially about works in the public realm. There is an element that does close one small street, but in essence, it's just keeping the streets open but improving the nature of them. The triangle car park element will result in the loss of 28 usable spaces, but at the same time, the car park itself will be vastly improved. So there's going to be a dedicated walkway through the middle of it, kind of separating it into two areas for people to walk and cycle through it safely, and then connect into the rest of the scheme. But having said that, also there'll be 5 new disabled and 3 parent-child friendly spaces that don't currently exist. As I said, the whole scheme itself will be proposed to Devon County Council's HATOP meeting on the 15th of July. The other thing to say, just really quickly, because full details of the whole scheme, the public consultation that we did early this year, and the 5 elements is set out in the report, so I'm not going to go through those in detail, but happy to take questions. The other main point to make really is that this project is a really good example of a public sector led partnership. So the money is coming from Sport England, the technical support and design work is coming from Devon County, and the whole project is being managed by James through the Live and Move programme from the City Council. So real collaboration there over a number of years to deliver something on the ground which the community has asked for and is much needed. Thank you.
Does James need to add anything at the moment? No? Okay, thank you. It has been an ongoing thing. So I'm going to open up for a discussion just to say, I don't think there is an issue, but I'm going to seek some clarification from the monitoring officer. There's 3 members of the executive who are also members of the HATOP committee. Are we prejudiced by making a decision of this when we go forward? So I need to just hold it there for a moment because we haven't made that decision yet. Because I'm happy to make a decision here. All right, I'm not precluding myself here, but you would have to tell me whether or not we would need to preclude ourselves from this item at the HATOP meeting. So I'll leave you time to have a think about that whilst I get into some questions. I just want to make sure we're squeaky clean, although it's just about traffic orders, which is a bit different. It's traffic orders on Tuesday, not other things. I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing next week. So open it up to the members of the executive. Councillor Vizard.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, thank you very much. This feels like it's been a long time coming. I think James and I first spoke about this some years ago now, but for very good reason it's taken time, not least COVID interrupting the consultation process, but which has been great. I mean, the public consultation has been excellent all the way through, and I echo the thoughts that Ian mentions about the collaboration between partners, Sport England, DCC and ECC. That's a really good example of that. It's taken time, but it's taken time for good reason. And I think that's been valuable, that period of time. It's very clear that this is an extremely different scheme to others that have been introduced elsewhere in the city. But there has been learning from those other schemes too, which is great. We've taken the public with us on this. Obviously, some very real benefits here for the local community in Newtown and the broader, wider Exeter community too. It will encourage use of Belmore Park, which is an absolutely fantastic amenity in the city centre and for what is one of the most deprived neighbourhoods in the city. So great for health and well-being. Great in terms of environmental plans for us. The street that's being closed, I would add, is just a small spur. It's Russell Street between Heaventree Road and the Triangle Car Park, which is of little use anyway. So I think this is a really good decision that will come into become a public amenity and a very useful space. Great support, I must say, and add from the cycling campaign, who I've engaged with, others have engaged with on this. They are very much behind it, so I think we're absolutely in the right direction on this, and I hope there may be more in the future in other areas of the city. So very welcome. I'll be very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. As we've heard, this has involved many years of work, going back to before the pandemic. In fact, I remember sitting at home, not allowed to go out, on my computer screen, having a virtual tour along this site with somebody holding their phone and showing us the way it was going to go. So definitely been a while arriving, but well worth it. I mean, it's a great example of a really well-grounded, community-led project, and its aim is to kind of retrofit improvements into an established living space to enhance, because a lot of development, certainly back then, happens at different times in different time frames, and actually bringing it together and making it more meaningful. I think that's really quite a challenge to achieve. And I think I just will highlight the 5 points that kind of drove this, the principles, and it was to place pedestrians and cyclists' needs first, to make people feel safe, make it easy to navigate, to offer opportunities for play and recreation, to be inclusive for all, and to enhance the sense of community. And if those are the principles that you're applying to an established environment, then you're actually making sure that that is a place where you want to live. So I think you will end up with a more welcoming space. And as Councillor Vizard said, it kind of draws across the area into one of our great green spaces of Beaumont Park, and it makes it a kind of cohesive. It just makes sense when you look at the whole thing and how it lands. It does lead to modest loss of parking, which, as we've heard at previous exec, will be offset by another project, which is going to come to fruition in due course. But the change of the living environment for those residents and visitors far outweighs this impact of lost parking, which itself will be offset. So it's a really great project. I've followed it all the way through from inception to this imminent point of delivery, and I think the engagement of partners of the community has really been an exemplar, which hopefully we will be able to continue.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Nobody else? I had, it's the opposition leaders. I had Councillor Peter Holland wanted to speak. Come and join us. Oh, sorry, before you do, Councillor Wright wants to come in.
Thank you. Yeah, just picking up about the car park spaces, because as always, we have to balance healthy living, being able to get about safely, which has to come, safety has to come top of everything, but also traders and car parking. But I just wanted to point out that, yes, it's a loss of 25 spaces, but it says here 19 of them are unusable anyway because of lovely green tree roots. So it's not actually a loss of 25, but also the provision now of disabled parking in the car park, which wasn't there before, and parent and child parking, very much needed. So this, to me, is a really good example of a project which balances the needs of everybody, and will just make that area so much nicer and easier to get around in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And free to park for people with disabled badges. Right, Councillor Holland. Just thought I'd make that.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to warmly welcome this project. I think it's brilliant, and I'm confident that my colleagues Alison Sheridan and Anne Jobson will support it also. A couple of things. I think it's an interesting and creative solution to promote active travel, and it has my support on that. I'm a little bit concerned about the loss of the 28 spaces. I think Councillor Wood touched on it, that there's another project, and my question is a very quick one. How close are we to actually adopting the old bus station to mitigate the 28 spaces which we're going to lose? And the reason I ask is that although the car park is underused, except at Christmas and when City are playing at home and many other pressure points during the year, the potential demise of Northbrook swimming pool. I've sat in meetings here where we've encouraged the swimmers of Northbrook to actually migrate to St Sibbel's Point. Some of them will drive, and they really do need a car parking space. So my question is around, when are we going to adopt the old car park, the old bus station, to be a car park? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Any other leader? Councillor Haig.
Thank you, Chair. The plan that's dated 3rd of June 2025 regarding Western Way differs from the Live Move website image. Assuming that the original design was what Guide Dogs for the Blind responded to, can it be explained why Guide Dog recommendations and their policy have been ignored? They have stated that shared spaces cause conflict between cyclists and pedestrians, particularly for people who are blind or partially sighted, and should be avoided. There is no raised border, and UCL University research suggests problems arise when this is missing. They highlighted the confusing labyrinth of paths on the Western Way on the new design, and when there is adequate space to create segregated cycles and footways. They also appear to have no tactile paving to indicate the crossing as you come out of Russell Street. And as Councillor Wood stated, it is all about accessibility. So I wondered where we will be going from here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anybody, other council leaders? Okay, thank you, Councillor Haig. Just coming back with regard to the, I think Councillor Wright mentioned about 19 spaces basically unusable at the moment, Councillor Holland. In relation to when, that's a question I want to hear. I'll be talking to the officers, and once we find a date on the plan that comes forward, we will let all councillors know onto that. There needs to be some more discussions about that in relation to that. With regard to Councillor Haig, I hear what you're saying. What I want to hear before I vote on anything, I understand that is, given the perfect world, what those people would like to see. are we breaching any rules? Are we breaching any disability things? And that's the first thing I need to know, because if we are, we've got some problems. If we're not, it may be a question of it's just not people. The other issues is that you've mentioned, Councillor Haig, you will need to email us for some of those, and we will see what we can do, if we can do, or whatever. Whether those things have been addressed already, some may have, some may not have. And what I really want to hear from the officers is, notwithstanding all that, because there was a listening there, that you would think, oh my God, you better not do this then. I need to know, are we acting against any DDA or anything else in that? Are we doing anything illegal in relation to that? It may not be what people want, but are we doing anything illegal? So I need to hear that. And just to, again, to say to Councillor Hay, need to see that in writing. And then I don't know whether or not the monitoring officer or the team can also advise as to whether three of us who were on the HATOP committee should recuse ourselves from this particular issue. So may want to, I'll deal with Ian, then I'll come to the monitoring officer. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll see in the report actually that the Western Way element, which was section 6, has been taken out of the scheme effectively, because although there was general agreement around that, that was the area that had the most number of alternative suggestions. So we decided to take it out of the scheme as such. There will be some scope for some very minor sort of landscaping and signage improvements, but we're suggesting that those are done as part of any general upgrade to the highway at Western Way. There is also a possibility in the future of some major developments in that vicinity, and so again, improvements to Western Way we felt would be better reflected when if and when those schemes come forward. So I think the answer to the question is we wouldn't be contravening any DDA requirements, because we're not proposing any physical works to Western Way as at the moment.
Okay, so it would still be handy if Councillor Hay can send us, because if something else is going to come down the line, it would be interested to hear that, you know, to help form that view. Thank you for that clarification, Ian. And so, do we vote or don't we vote at HATOP next week, please?
Sorry, it's Deputy Morris Officer. I can confirm that you're fine to vote on this matter in relation to your recommendation.
Thank you. See, I'm always looking for a way to. Anyway, never mind. So we will do that. So there we are. It's a notice that there's two recommendations here. I think they're both resolved. Will be resolved if we vote for them. So I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? And all those things that Councillor Wood said, I just think it would be just a nicer place to live as well, if you need that. And I think that's quite important sometimes for people. So we come on to item 9, which is the Council's costed organisational carbon footprint projection studies to 2023. And these are all resolved matters. And I've got Ian, Victoria and Joe. Ian, do you want to, who's doing this one?
Thank you, Chair. I'll introduce it, and there may well be some detailed questions, so we'll pick those up as and when. So, as you've said, Chair, the report summarises the costed organisational carbon footprint projections 2030 study. I'll be honest, I'm going to shorthand that. I'm going to call it the carbon descent report, so you know what we're talking about. But what it's really about, despite the title, this is about how the council, how we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and work towards achieving net zero. That's what it's about. Now, first thing to point out, I think, is that this is a completely groundbreaking study, because for the first time it estimates the true cost of decarbonising our services to 2030. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that this is the only type of this report that's available. So there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of important information, not just for this council, but for the sector generally, that's come from this. So we're very pleased and grateful to the university who've produced this very detailed study that's appended to the report. So the study looks at 3 different scenarios. There's the business as usual, and then there's 2 other scenarios called the mid-term and max-term net zero. And within those scenarios, it looks at all of the operations across 5 different sectors within the council's functions. The other thing to explain and try and demystify if I can is that it talks about scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So really simplistically, if you like, what that means is that it's the direct emissions that we produce. So for example, from our fleet of vehicles, but also any indirect emissions from when we buy electricity. So that's what that means. I think it's also just worth me unpacking these different scenarios, because the whole study is based on those. So a good understanding of that will help you. So the business as usual scenario, I actually think that's a bit of a misnomer, but that's the way it's described in the study. And what it means is it's the measures that we're already undertaking or committed to undertaking and funding to reduce our carbon emissions, and they're largely through government grants. So the reason I'm saying it's a bit of a misnomer, because normally business as usual means it's normal. Well, these aren't normal measures by any stretch. In fact, I would say that they're cutting edge, and they're clearly demonstrating the commitment of this council to achieving net zero. And let's just look at one aspect. Let's just look at housing, and we'll follow that through the 3 scenarios. So I'm choosing housing because it's certainly that provides our biggest carbon footprint across all services. So we have a major program of carbon retrofit for our council houses, and that's helping to cut the cost of our tenants' energy bills, as well as reducing carbon. Now, not surprisingly, that's a very popular program, and with the right amount of government funding, we'll roll that out across the whole of our stock. So that's the business as usual. So to get to mid and max term scenarios, what we'd need to do then under the council housing programme is really to look at much bigger reductions in the carbon emissions. And the only way we could achieve that is through introducing brand new technology into our council homes. So that's things like heat source pumps, but fundamentally it's switching from gas to electricity. Now, whilst that's going to be incredibly costly in terms of capital outlay, it also means that in the short term, energy prices for our tenants would go up, because obviously at the moment gas is cheaper than electricity. So what that does is tell us that under those mid and max term scenarios, most of the measures at the moment sadly are unaffordable. But what this report does, without committing to making any of those significant capital interventions, it does allow us to start to prioritise. So when the money, if there is funding that becomes available, we know where to target that funding so we can get the maximum amount of carbon reductions. So it's an incredibly powerful report in that regard. The next stage of the work then is to look at how we can explore additional business as usual measures and how they can be incorporated into our existing and new service plans. So we've heard from Joan Binder about the new corporate plan. So on the back of that will be each directorate will have a series of service plans, and the space within those service plans to set out these business as usual carbon reduction measures and how they could be costed and how they could be delivered as part of the corporate plan. So there's another report that we'll bring back to you in due course. Once that work has been done with all the services, we'll bring that report back, which will be a costed carbon descent plan for all of our services, and that will show how we're taking the learnings, if you like, from the university study and directing them into our service plans. So the report does go into a lot of detail. There's in terms of our operations in housing, commercial property, transport, as well as considering offsets. And think the conclusion is that we know that achieving even a business as usual scenario is going to be really challenging. And we will need additional funding even for that. If we escalate to the mid and max term, then it's a different mindset entirely. It's a different paradigm where we would need significant capital investment, which we don't have at the moment. So there's no commitment to achieving those scenarios. What there is a commitment to do is to look at what is realistic within the current financial climate, target our efforts, prioritise. So if we'll be ready as and when more funding comes downstream to utilise that and target for the maximum benefit. So that work gives us that knowledge. We can prepare investment bids, we can plan our annual service plans and budgets with the knowledge that we've got, and at the same time start to bring forth more detailed proposals for consideration. So I appreciate there's a lot of technical detail. So we've got Joe and Victoria for that. I've tried to sort of demystify some of the jargon, but and again, apologise for the amount of jargon that is in the report. It's just one of those areas that's quite difficult to see. So the recommendations are there just to really note the study and note the progress that we're making on some of the fantastic projects that we've already got up and running to reduce our carbon footprint. And then to bring further report back to executive in due course that will show how that knowledge is being enacted through our service plans in due course. So
Thank you, Ian.
thank you.
Okay, do I have any contributions from members of the executive? Councillor Vizard.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, two good reports, a very, very good officer report, which I think is really clear and helpful for members, and clearly what is a pioneering report provided by the university's department, which is of incredible value for us as well. I think our membership of the South West Energy and Environment Group, where we contribute and get these fantastic resources and reports from our contributions, from our money, just shows the value of that relationship. So long may that continue. We're very lucky to have that incredible knowledge on our doorstep, and this is a really golden opportunity to shout our case more loudly, which is absolutely the vision and the sort of higher strategy. Ian is right, I think, to say the business as usual case is a bit of a misnomer. I feel exactly the same way about that. It suggests that we are somehow doing nothing new, nothing more than we are, but that's not true. It's absolutely not the case that it's just a sort of flat line. We are investing a lot of time, doing a lot of work on pulling out all of these additional measures we can that we can take throughout our operations, and the service plans and integration across the council is really critical here. So that's an excellent piece of work that's coming forward. It's the cost carbon reduction report that will come forward as well out of this. It will be really a very, very important document. Now, these are very stark. You can take almost what you want from these things, and I really hope that this is seen positively and not just to pull things apart, because of course, you know, with the best in the world, we do not have the funding to achieve the highest possible outcome of 99% at this point in time. Let's hope things will move in that direction with in terms of government funding. And this, as I say, I think this does give us an opportunity to knock on some of those doors and say, look at what we're doing here. Look at what Exeter has in terms of the Met Office, the university, all our partnership and stakeholders, the community energy, and all sorts of opportunities ahead. Our funding of Riverside. There's lots of incredible stuff going on that we need to shout about. Only other thing I wanted to say is that I really welcome the opportunity to scrutiny to look at this in September. I think that's a really good thing. So there'll be an opportunity for members to talk about this and pull out some of the more detail then, and I hope that will give rise to more positive conversations at that point, and input as well. So thank you to the officers for the incredible amount of work they've put in on this. It's been a long time coming, a bit like the previous report, but again, for very good reason. I think it's we've absolutely nailed it in terms of the report in front of us. So thank you, and very happy to support the recommendation, which I accept as only to note, but I think this is a starting point.
Thank you, Councillor. Got Councillor Wright.
Thank you. This is so useful for everything, to be able to refer to this, because this is a big priority for us, as we've seen with the corporate plan. However, we also have other priorities, which I think is grammatically incorrect. I'm sure you can only have one priority. We've got 4, but I'll leave that. But where the tension comes sometimes is going to be, as you've said, when we get the grant funding to be able to do things and go forward with things. So I think this is very useful to be able to give a sounding board, a readiness for that. The wording of the recommendation on 2.3, so thank you for explaining that, about how business as usual can be incorporated into the service plan. You explained that, which alleviated the sort of worry that I've got on that. But it's the next bit about to enable prioritisation of service led decisions. So I'm presuming that this next report that's coming back, that's referenced in here, we'll go into that in more detail. So we'll be able to see when we get down to actual sort of ground level decisions that have to be made. For instance, if it was between carrying on with retrofit or bringing up more council housing, being able to build more council housing. That's what I mean about where tensions are going to come between 2 of the 4 priorities. So I'm just hoping that that sort of thing will be explored in that report that's coming forward.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I think this report is as Ian has said, it's groundbreaking because it really highlights the choices, the hard choices we have to make. And as has been said many times, business as usual is slightly dismissive of the amount of work that staff have put through and officers have put through trying to deliver the amazing projects we've already seen. We've got a passive house swimming pool, one of the first in the country, and still a fairly rare thing to happen worldwide. We've got quite an icon there as to the commitment that we put to energy efficiency. We've got a solar farm out on Marsh Barton. We've done some fantastic work, and that is business as usual. What we do on top of that to try and deliver between the mid and the max is incredible. But it lays out for me the challenge we face as a council, but beyond that, the challenge we face as a city and a society if we're going to deliver carbon neutral. We've got some incredibly hard choices ahead. When I look at the report, obviously my eye's drawn to the 6 leisure centres, and looking at St Sybil's Point, the footprint around that was around electricity and the occasional use of a gas backup there. So I'm just wondering if officer could give a little bit more information about the decarbonisation of the national supply, because that's where we draw the power from St Sybil's Point, is the national supply. And I know there are national activities which bring down the carbon footprint of running St Sid's. There's also decarbonisation work, which we've heard at this committee before, that will be implemented on the riverside. So I was just wondering if officers could give us a little bit more information about that, the work that's being done there. Again, this is a business as usual, but it gives you some of the idea about what business as usual means. And of course, when I look at the centres that we run, 3 of them are pools. And nationally, we know how large the carbon footprint of swimming pools are. And of course, that, and this goes across all of this, carbon footprint fairly tightly indicates the cost of running something. The cost of running our pools when you have such large carbon footprints is expensive. And so it's really important for me within this report to see how we can drive down the carbon footprint of both our leisure centres, but our other buildings. And that's where some of the challenges come. When you look at the RAM Museum and the age of that building, we were looking at decarbonisation work on that, and it's incredibly difficult to retrofit that to the level that you need to bring down the carbon footprint to the level that we need to in a building of that age. So yeah, just a couple of questions for officers there. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else? There's a couple of things there from Councillor Wright and Councillor Wood. Is it going to be Joe and Victoria? Ian?
Kick off, and then I'll let Joe answer the kick off. So the question about the service plans from Councillor Wright, thank you for that question. When we bring a report back on the costed carbon descent, I'll call it that, it will set out that in detail. I think to emphasise is that there's a lot of existing work that is ongoing, that's already funded and costed and prioritised. So that work will continue. So, but when we get the opportunities, we'll be able to put additional business as usual measures into our delivery plans. And when the funding comes, we'll know then we can make some choices about whether that's possible to deliver those other projects that we're not currently committed to. The other thing to say is, of course, within, because I focus on the housing because that's an obvious one. It's a major part of what we do as a city. It's also our biggest carbon footprint. So there's a range of things that we can do to under the business as usual. So including building more council houses, and if we build them to a certain standard, that will reduce our carbon footprint as well. So we're committed to that, of course, with our council on building projects as well. So I think there was some more detailed questions about the grid and Riverside for Joe and
We're going to do
Victoria.
Joe first, or whatever you two.
Regarding St St Paul's Point, it is a very groundbreaking lead project, but it is a large building and it consumes a lot of energy. And quite rightly, you pointed out that there is still a carbon footprint there that reflects that. It will hopefully, now everything's balancing, run completely on electricity, and it's predicted that the grid will decarbonise by 2030, so that will see a huge drop in the emissions there on that site. It's also planned, depending on further surveys, to hopefully add some solar PV at that site. That's an aspiration at the moment, which will hopefully reduce carbon emissions earlier before the grid gets to a position where it is fully decarbonised. With regards to Riverside, a huge chunk of the emissions there, as you can see in the chart, is a substantial proportion of that chart. It is the emissions are produced from the gas heating and the swimming pool at the site. And the heat pumps there will obviously remove that immediately. So there'll be a huge improvement as a result of the decarbonisation scheme work there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So opposition leaders, Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, this is a really, really interesting report. So thank you for working with the university to do that. And hearing what we've heard, I do hope my Labour colleagues will be lobbying government very firmly for more investment for councils to undertake this really important work. It's really crucial that actually the government steps up to support councils' aspirations. Just want to ask a question which will just thinking about the recommendations in terms of this costed plan that's coming up. Will it do two things? First of all, will it set out the savings to the council in terms of the return on the investment that's being made? And also, when we passed the climate emergency motion, we talked about the idea of a just transition, and part of the outcome of doing this work is actually to benefit taxpayers and our residents, because there will be reduced bills to the council, which has already been mentioned, but also the work to council housing will reduce the bills for tenants, which is absolutely crucial. really interested in this idea of business as usual, because it does say here in the report it's about the level of activity that's already planned or committed to by the City Council. And if we look at the graphs across many areas, it doesn't actually show, by pursuing a business as usual route, any reductions or minimal reductions by 2030, particularly if you look at refuse vehicles, for example. So I'd be really interested to know, if we pursued this route, when will we see significant reductions in carbon emissions? Because at the minute it's really not clear in the report. And so if we're prioritising work, what we need to think about this issue of this just transition, and I was quite surprised that there was no comment of that in the equalities impact assessment, because that will inform future decisions that will be taken here. And finally, I want to come back to the point I made earlier. In the report and in the greenhouse gas emissions inventory that was produced last year, and this report here, it talks about the importance of trees and nature to sequestering carbon. And this is not listed as one of the priorities in the recommendation. I think this is a serious omission. In terms of the corporate plan, we've heard how important nature is to people. And we've talked about in the report, it talks about the role of nature in terms of sequestering carbon, but also it has a role in terms of climate action, in terms of adaptation and increasing resilience. So, you know, trees which provide shade and heat and help runoff to reduce flooding impacts. So I would really seriously ask the executive to include investment in nature as one of the priorities and not let it fall off the edge. This is a really important opportunity that we have today to invest in our green spaces, parks, other biodiversity. The council has 690 hectares, a third of that is green spaces. We can do more to invest in that as part of our climate action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other leader wants to speak? No? Oh, I think there's a number of things we can get there with regard to the rate of return. I mean, we can have a look at that if it's necessary and if we need to do it. The just transition, business as usual graphs, you tell us about that if you can. Interesting about the qualities impact assessment. Have we done anything right or wrong there? If that would be interesting to know. And in relation to the trees and everything else like that, I mean, we have got a big program. I was at the LGA last week, and there was that stand which you could go on, and they showed you the green areas in the local authority on the thing. It was very good, and Exeter is green everywhere, which was quite nice, if you know what I mean. In comparison, still more to do. So we're interested to know, have we missed a trick here with this report by not including the trees? And if not, is that still something that we can prioritise and deal with? I'd be very interested to hear that. The qualities impact statement, those graphs, and also that just transition. Ian, can you answer any of that?
I'll
If you
try.
can't, we'll have to get back to
We
it.
might need to get back on some
Yeah,
of
'cause
it.
it's not going to affect the decisions this evening, other than, are we missing a trick? Because there's no reference to investment and about trees and all that sort of stuff, or that doesn't preclude any of that in the future. I need to know that.
But so fundamentally, planting trees is a way of offsetting your carbon footprint. So it's going back to what Councillor Vizard said earlier about the difference between carbon neutral and carbon, net zero. So it's absolutely something that we do. I'm sure if Kat was here, she'd tell us about how many trees we plant every year in our spaces, but those spaces are for other things as well. And if we just blanketly carpeted all our open space with trees, you probably achieve quite a bit of offsetting, but I'm not sure anybody would want that. So that the technical thing is that planting trees is really about sequestration or offsetting, if you like. I'm not familiar with the term that was used by councillor there about just transition. So I don't know whether Victoria or Joe are familiar with that term. In terms of the EQIA was undertaken, and it's absolutely clear what the impacts that this has. So I'm very confident about that.
Thank you for that. On the just transition, we can have a look at that to see. I don't think it impacts on this statement at the moment, and indeed, we are got entries just look nice. I quite like them, quite therapeutic. Councillor Asbashian.
Sorry to butt in. I just wanted to clarify because Councillor Moore actually said nature and not just trees. So.
At all of that, it's the same principle. Have we missed something? Have we closed it down? I don't believe we have. I still think there's other opportunities in all of that. So yeah, that was an error. But when we get a lot of detailed questions and points like that, even I can't remember them all. If you know what I mean. If I had them all written down in front of me, I made notes, but so I'm sorry I didn't pick up everything in relation to that. So we got 4 recommendations here, and this will be a resolved matters once we've dealt with it. But we will take some of those points away that have been mentioned around the table. So I'm going to move those from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? Oh yes, you left the room. So you should say to me, and I'll have a PMB, a physical needs break. No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. See me after school. So that's been carried. Thank you very much. And so now we go on to the last item on the agenda. We are doing well. Joint habitat sites mitigation strategy, and this is a recommendation to council. Ian, you're busy tonight.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. So this is about a successful partnership that's been going on since 2014 between this council, East Devon and Teambridge to protect 3 of the most valuable nature and wildlife sites in the whole of the UK. So that's the Estuary, the East Devon Pebblebed Heaths and Dawlish Warren. So the current strategy was approved back in 2014. It's ready for a new strategy now. So the new strategy that you've been recommended to approve will take us from this year to 2030. And what it does is basically introduce a whole range of measures to protect those incredibly important wildlife sanctuaries. The measures that would be part of the strategy are funded through SIL. So each council contributes through its SIL allocation to those measures. And the reason for it being SIL is because the recreational pressure that would result from an increase in housing development would directly impact on those environments and cause significant harm. So it's logical that the funding comes from SIL, which obviously arises from building houses. But there is another way of looking at it as well, which is that if we introduce this strategy and introduce those measures, that unlocks more house building and also makes local plans more likely to be adopted. So what you're doing is you're protecting the environment, but you're also freeing up more land to build much needed homes. So this report has been produced jointly by officers from the 3 districts. So the same report with obvious local differences has been presented to the 3 councils. And the recommendation is for the executive and the council to approve the adoption of the new strategy, which is attached as Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to open it up. Councillor Patrick.
So thank you. Sorry about that. So obviously I welcome this strategy. It's protecting these key wildlife sites and it's allowing them to be accessed and used where appropriate by the public safely and responsibly. And also, of course, it will enable these key developments to progress, meeting our housing targets. I just want to highlight again, obviously, that this is a joint venture between East Devon and Teignmouth and authorities as well as ourselves.
And it's obviously entirely appropriate that we have those sorts of strategic partnerships. So particularly when we're considering management of these sorts of significant critical sites. But can the director provide an understanding of how Exeter City's interests will be protected, particularly when it comes to creating and managing any new suitable alternative natural green spaces, otherwise known as SANGs, such as those listed on page 53 of the strategy, as well as, of course, planning and delivering those, I'm going to spell out, the strategic access management and monitoring projects. So, for example, regarding SANGs, I'll be discussing with officers and the executive the potential for a new SANG in the Whipton Beacon Heath area in future. So can we have an understanding of how that sort of collaboration and negotiation will work, bearing in mind that we're working across 3 authorities and obviously we've all got our own needs and ambitions.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm glad you let Councillor Patrick go before me because she said absolutely everything I had written down here to say, and we hadn't actually discussed it beforehand. So thank you, Councillor Patrick. I've just got one thing to add, well, no, 2 things, and perhaps a clarification from the director. One is that this particular partnership, which is very successful, has been held up by Natural England as an exemplar of this type of working, so we're definitely in their good books, so it's really good news. And I think I'm right in that the other 2 councils have already passed it, so that's good news for us as well, because we know what happened with the GESP. And just one bit of clarification, Director, I believe that where SIL isn't chargeable, that it can be, a contribution can be made through S106, because I believe that's what I've been told by the officer in East Devon about this. So, and these are monies that it's not taken away from the City Council at all. This is money that goes direct to the project. And I would recommend people read Appendix 1 and Appendix 5, which actually gives you some indication of, so Appendix 1 already lists contributions that are benefiting from this. So we've got 3 of our valley parks, and then Appendix 5 is sort of future named areas that could attract, this is in Exeter, attract funding. So yeah, that's all I need to say.
All right, nobody else? Well, I will add before you come back on a few of those points, Ian, that I have attended some of the Habitats meeting, and I'm serious, I found them quite interesting and quite informative, and on what goes on in the Warren and everything else. I'm not going to mention Petal, but I did, and there is something there, and it's very rare in this country, and we have it on the Warren. We have it on the Warren, and it's being protected. I think that is fantastic, personally speaking. But you heard Councillor Patrick, who, because of she's got a proper job, couldn't come to my briefing, executive briefing prior to this. And as I said, Councillor Williams was going to add, but Councillor Patrick already came into it, because I'm very keen. Why can't we? Because we've got an area which may need some funding. There's a golden opportunity here for us to turn that into something. I know you can't commit now, but it would be fantastic if that could be looked at, because I know they take it to mitigate, but not everybody's going to say we're going to go out for a walk and therefore we're going down to Dawlish, if you understand what I mean. They will do it locally and everything, and we've got something on our doorstep that, one, we would like to protect and enhance. So that's something what Councillor Patrick has said, and we're very keen on that coming forward. So I don't know, is there a couple of points you can raise on all of that, Ian, before I call in the other lead?
Thank you, Chair. So it's a brilliant point that Councillor Patrick and Williams have made, and I know it's a particular favourite subject. So the SANGs, that's one of those acronyms. It stands for Suitable Alternative Natural Green Space. What it actually means is that by providing an alternative green space, you're deflecting people away from the really important habitats and creating something for dog walkers and for runners to actually go and use for recreation purposes without having to go and potentially damage those incredibly important habits. So it's part of the overall strategy. So the funding from SIL very much goes into that, as well as administering a sort of program of work and measures. So all of that work, because this is a joint approach again, and it has to be because it's strategic. These important wildlife areas don't recognise administrative boundaries, you know, neither do the animals and plants. So you've got to look strategically. So there is a committee, a joint committee called the Habitats Mitigation Exec Committee, and I believe Councillor Williams is our representative, and will be able to represent Exeter's views absolutely brilliantly on that committee. So there is that committee. That's how effective and transparent oversight and allocation of contributions is made and priorities are made. But that doesn't prevent stuff that we can do within Exeter. So I know that there is some work going on behind the scenes at the moment to look at whether we can utilise, you know, valley parks for SANGs and other things like biodiversity net gain, which is a different thing entirely. But so there is absolutely an opportunity there. I can't give you full details tonight, but it's absolutely something that I think we want to look at because there's an obvious opportunity there.
Thank you for that, Ian. Councillor Holland or Councillor Hay, do you want to come in on any of this? No? Okay. So it's a recommendation to council. So I'm going to move from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? That's agreed. 7 minutes past 7. Thank you very much, everybody.